Hey everybody, welcome to this week's Roundup. No special announcements or anything, so let's jump right in. First up, J&T Studios have just added a clear option to their Sega Saturn Saroo case choices, and this is available by itself for $20 or as a complete Saroo package, including the PCB and everything, for $85. And the total color choices you have now are this clear, transparent smoked, and Sakura pink. And I wanted to talk about this for two reasons. First, just to let you know, there's a new Saroo shell available that's high quality, not some thin garbage that you normally find on the Saroos, and not something 3D printed, which I love 3D printed, but this is from RetroRGB Restore, and it's a really high quality injection mold, which is just like all the other high quality RetroRGB Restore shells. So I wanted to mention that for anybody interested, and if you already bought a Saroo from like AliExpress or something and you wanted to have a better case or a case for it, that's definitely an option. But I also just wanted to remind everybody that this is currently the best version of the Saroo that you could get. And yeah, it's more expensive than a lot of the other choices at $85. You get a beveled edge, you get new components, not repurposed old components. And you get the high quality case along with it. So if you're on a budget and you need to buy one of the cheaper ones, go ahead and do so. Just understand what you're getting and what the difference is. And the beveled edge thing, I think, is the most important, because if you buy something super cheap and it dies in a year, that stinks. That shouldn't be the way things are, but that's it, right? The thing that you bought for cheap doesn't work. However, if you have a non-beveled edge and you're putting it into your Saturn, constantly smashing those pins as you go in, you could damage your Saturn as well as buying something cheap that might not last long. So picking up this is definitely my recommendation, and I think the Shiro crew also agrees. And if you want to see the Saroo in action and you want to see why it might or might not be a better choice than other ODEs for you, check out Tito's video comparing them. And one of these days, hopefully I'll get a chance to do a live stream and do a deep dive. I got a transparent smoked here for Cousin Scott, so maybe when I can get him over to bring the Saturn and mess around with it, we could do a live stream checking it out. But there's tons of other videos and articles out there about it. So if you want a Saroo, this is probably the one to get. Next up, Ms. Fusion is now a fork of the Mr. Fusion installer for the Mr. FPGA project that includes the update all script in the build to save yourself one step. That's really all the information you needed to know about this, but I think some people were getting confused, so I wanted to take a moment to talk about it. Normally I leave all the Mr. stuff to Lou, but I just wanted a post out there that was searchable so people could understand the difference, and I'm going to talk about it here, but skip over this if you already understand what the differences are. So let me take a step back for a minute. The Mr. Fusion project is a fully automated installer for the Mr., where if you need to build one from scratch or rebuild the software on an existing Mr., all you do is flash a micro SD card with it, and then you boot, and it automatically takes care of everything. And that includes an update script that could bring it up to speed, and that works great, but then you manually have to add a ton of stuff in order to get the cores working. Depending on what you're looking to do. Some stuff is pretty easy, some stuff isn't. So the update all script by the Ypsilon gets you everything that you could need to get started. And it really is awesome, but it does have that kind of gray area of, what if you download a wallpaper that uses a character from a video game, even if it was hand drawn by a member of the community? Technically, that's somebody else's intellectual property that you're giving away for free, you're not selling, but that's one of those things that everybody in retro is probably used to, that gray area of, it's only helping, it's not hurting anything, but to avoid any legal issues whatsoever, the Mr. Fusion project doesn't want to include update all, which I personally think is the smart move. You want to just have that live up on GitHub forever and not worry about anything, not have to argue with anybody over it. It's there. So a couple of weeks ago, they added update all and then removed it, I'm assuming for those reasons, which totally makes sense. So the creator of Update All just simply forked Mr. Fusion and now is calling it Ms. Fusion with everything identical. Still works just as good. No real changes other than Update All is included. So I wanted to talk about that to clarify why and what the differences are. And also just to say that, to kind of politely remind most people here listening that while most of us are huge nerds that use micro SD cards and scripts and stuff like that all the time, to the average person who's just trying to follow a step-by-step guide like the one I did a couple years ago, every step that you add is one more thing that could feel overwhelming, one more possible chance for failure. So anytime you could cut something like that out, it's just better for the average person. And also, don't forget, the first time you do anything, you're a beginner. It doesn't matter how smart you are, you still have to run everything step by step. So basically, if you want to install Mister or reinstall Mister, just use Ms. Fusion to save yourself a step. If you want to go back and follow that video I made a couple of years ago, everything's identical. You just don't even need to you don't need to manually download update all. So I just wanted to take a moment to talk about this and just kind of clarify it. But I think this was exactly the right move. And now there's just an option that saves people a couple of seconds or might remove one step that might make things easier for beginners. Tito from Macho Nacho Productions recently posted a video showing the installation process of the Mega Switch HD into Model 1 Sega Genesis or Mega Drive consoles. It's kind of a complicated mod and it's not cheap, so this is definitely something for the hardcore Genesis enthusiast. But if you have a Model 1 that has kind of messy video output and you're going direct to a flat panel, this could be the perfect solution for you. Now, there's a million right ways to do it these days. You could do a triple bypass into a scaler or direct into a CRT. You could use a Mister when you want the highest possible video quality and just use the original hardware if you want to go and just have a totally original experience. There's a lot of great ways to accomplish all this stuff now, but if you're just looking for a quality HDMI kit, this is it. There's a couple of things to note. First of all, the audio is pulled from the Genesis itself, so it's basically just doing an analog to digital conversion of the audio, which is generally a lot more forgiving than digital to analog conversion of the audio. And Tito showed one method of getting it. I definitely preferred using a different way to pull audio. I showed that in my live stream, and I kind of talk about it here in the post. The quality should be about the same, but I like isolating it from the volume slider. Another thing to note is that this does not include the Sega Master System board. Tito said he would follow up in a video about that coming up on the second channel that he has. And maybe in that video, he'll move the audio pins over just to show the alternative installation point. Maybe he'll even do the subcarrier bypass to get jail bars out of the RGB output. That way, if you're still going to something like you're streaming on HDMI and going to an RGB monitor, you could get that improved signal while keeping composite video. I don't know, this is certainly a lot more to talk about, but I'm a fan of the kit. I think that it's perfect for the right scenario. And I guess the only other thing to mention that I saw in the video was Tito was talking about the single buffer mode versus the zero delay mode. And as Tito mentioned, the single buffer mode is great for games like Sonic 2 that use multiple resolutions. But I think the proper way to do this is if you have one of these installed, connect it to your display and switch it to zero delay mode. And if everything works, just leave it in zero delay mode. And if you have compatibility issues or dropouts, leave it back to buffered mode. It doesn't have a lot of latency in buffered mode, but if you're going to get the exact same compatibility, why not just drop it down to zero delay mode if it's compatible, which it should be. The Genesis is pretty forgiving. It's not like the SNES, which is not very compatible unless you have some sort of buffering or an expensive higher end processor. So, check this out if you're interested, but I'm obviously a fan of it. I've covered it quite a bit, and I'm really looking forward to Tito's follow-up video with the Master System board installation, because I think that's going to be pretty cool for people who want quality-looking SMS games from original carts. Next, a new PC racing game is about to be released called Linear S that seeks to replicate the Sega Saturn's arcade game style using Unity 3D. And I think the best way to describe it is just to read what Dave wrote in his post, because I think this kind of perfectly articulates it. Linear S is a single-player arcade racing game that embraces both the design philosophy and the constraints of early to mid-90s 3D games, particularly those on the Sega Saturn. The underlying framework of Project S is really what sets Linear apart from several games that have come before it that have merely aimed to mimic the generally low poly appearance of PlayStation and Saturn games. The Project S framework is basically a set of tools, shaders, techniques, and an overall philosophy aimed at faithfully replicating the visual rendering style of the Sega Saturn, not just aesthetically, but functionally as well. It's made entirely in Unity, and games developed under the Project S framework must adhere to some pretty strict specifications, including things like targeting to run at about 30 frames per second like you would get on the original Saturn. However, 60 frame per second modes would be available, which I always appreciate. And basically just constraints to make it feel, look, and play like a Saturn game would have, even though it's running on a PC and has things like widescreen modes and stuff like that. So while it's not available to download yet, I just love stuff like this. And I think this is going to be a pretty cool way to have a new style racing game. And anybody that likes the older style games already understands why. The new games are amazing, but they're different. So if that's not what you prefer to play in that moment, then the older ones are definitely going to be what fits that moment better. So having new choices for that is awesome. Also, the Shiro crew did an interview with Advent Softworks, the people who were doing it. So if you want to take a look at this and really get some more behind the scenes stuff, definitely check out Dave's post. But this was absolutely awesome, and I'm absolutely looking forward to trying this out and seeing how it performs. There's a brand new Sega Genesis game called Damon Claw that was successfully funded on Kickstarter, and those are currently going out to customers or are about to go out to customers. And if you want to order it and you missed out on the Kickstarter, you could now pre-order the physical version for about $80, and they'll ship right after the Kickstarter backers get theirs, so about a month or two from now. And this is a 16-bit action platformer developed by Neofid Studios, which is the same makers of Demons of Astaborg and Astabros. So basically, if you like new games on older platforms and you want a physical version, check out the post, check out the videos showing what it's like, and see if it's something that you want to pick up. But it looks awesome, so this is kind of an easy one. Check out the videos that are out there, see if this is your style of game, and if you're the type of person that likes physical copies, definitely pick this one up. And if not, maybe they'll have a digital version at some point in the future too. But links to everything you need should be right here. Now it's time for this week's Mr. Updates, care of Lou from Lou's Retro Source. As usual, I'm just going to skim through these and give my thoughts where I feel like it, but if you want more details and visual examples, please check out Lou's video. First up, the Ypsilon just updated Update All to version 2.3 with some additions, including a log viewer, which you could toggle off if you don't need it, which is cool if you want to see what it updated. And also, when Update All itself it has a new version, you no longer need to run this twice. You just need to run it once, and it'll automatically first update all, and then restart the process, just making it simpler. Next, Hotego has added a couple of new arcade games to beta testers, so Patreon subscribers only. Wonder Momo, Hopping Mappy, and Packland, and those will all be released publicly as soon as the bugs are worked out. Speaking of which, Hotego promoted JTFL Story to public, which means games like Fairyland Story, Victorious 9, and a bunch of others are now just available for anybody to download via Update All and just start playing. Hotego also continued work on the Sega System 18 core, and they experienced a breakthrough where they have sprites visible on the games Laser Ghost and Where's Wally. So any Sega boards, obviously, it's always exciting to see more arcade games added to the platform. Mr. Main has been updated with fixes for Saturn and PC Engine. There's an interlaced video vertical filter from Zach. And there's also a new fix that helps certain scenarios when you're using direct mode of the Mr. into the RetroTink 4K. There were previous things when previous games that you launched through the PlayStation Core might have locked up both, so you'd have to power cycle them, and that's all fixed. I already talked about Ms. Fusion, and also, there's a beta core of the Taito F2 arcade hardware available by Martin Donlin, aka Wickerwaka, and it's even available via the Update All script. So if you wanted to check it out and start testing, just fire that up and give it a try. And there's also been some updates to the SNES, TurboGrafx 16, and CD cores as well. So as always, thanks so much to Lou for keeping up with this stuff. There's no way I could do it without him, and if you rely on Lou's info as much as I do, consider supporting him on Patreon as well. This last one's a weird one, but stick with me. You might think of it in a different perspective after I'm done with this. But subcog.net has just uploaded PDFs that allow Arcade 1-Up owners to print out Scanline masks on transparency paper, put them over the LCD screen, and have Scanlines added that way if your version of the Arcade 1-Up doesn't have Scanline generation, or if you just don't like the way it looks. And when I first heard about this, I had such mixed feelings until I saw the website and saw examples, and I saw the context in which this might actually be a really awesome solution. And basically, single game arcade cabinets with LCDs might actually be the best scenario for it. You could do something like take these PDFs, edit them so that when you put them over the screen, it actually lines up properly. Because remember, the reason you get those jagged edges scaling retro is because each of those are the lines that were drawn by a CRT. So having the scan lines fall in those exact same positions is going to be required. Otherwise, it would just look messy. You might as well just take an old screen from a screen door and tape that to the side of your LCD panel. That obviously isn't going to look good. But the way this is done, it could line up and it could look pretty cool. Obviously, if you take these without modifying them, I would really only try them on the same arcade one-up cabinets that run the same games that are shown here. But this is such a cheap thing. You could just have them made at any Staples, Kinko's, whatever, try and print your own and just give it a shot. But it certainly has the potential to accomplish decent things for single arcade games, or in a scenario where all the games you're playing were the same original source resolution. You could mess around with this and you could try it in different combinations. You might be able to get it to work with something like any games that are 256 pixels wide that use the same vertical scaling, might line up properly, but maybe not. I don't know. This is one of those fun and cheap projects that I think it's worth a try if you're curious, but just don't expect this to be a replacement for CRT mask emulation. Expect this to be something like, hey, I got this arcade one-up cabinet. It's totally fine for what I'm using it for, but I hate the blocky look. Let me print out a piece of paper, transparency paper, stick it over the front and get kind of more of a retro look to it. For the amount of money it would cost to do that, I think that's absolutely awesome. And your average person might not even know the difference. They might just be able to look at that and go, oh, that's neat. Kind of looks closer to what a CRT might have looked like. So, if you want examples of what this looks like, check out the video embedded, check out the main page there. But I just think this is cool. And I like weird solutions that, even if they're not for everybody, I guarantee there's a handful of people listening to this right now going, I have a dedicated arcade cab that I had to put an LCD monitor in because I couldn't find a CRT. So until I find one that's compatible, let me print out one of these things and put it over the LCD and adjust it to look just right. And who knows? I mean, it might actually just be a perfect solution. The only other tip is if you're doing the scaling yourself, make sure it's an integer. Otherwise, just like with digital scalers, if you have uneven scaling, the lines won't line up evenly, so it'll just look like a mess. But yeah, this one was neat. Thanks to subcog.net for sharing it. And for anybody who has any experiments they want to do with it, post in the comments and let me know how it went. I think stuff like this is fun, and I think it's exactly what it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be the best scanline generator ever. It's supposed to be a cheap solution that might be perfect. Well, that's it for this week. As always, thanks to everybody who watches, listens, plays nicely in the comments, and especially thank you to anybody who supports in any way, because it really is you, and especially the monthly supporters like Floatplane and Patreon supporters, that keep all of this going. So thank you all so much, and I'll see you next week. This week's Roundup is brought to you by Neo Paradigm Entertainment, connecting Southeast Asian influencers with opportunities in the West.